American values, which the standard set was, pioneer spirit, effort, optimism, competition, directness, free will, informality, openness, practicality, and self-reliance. So those were sort of the, recognized and understood assumptions of American culture. And largely what makes us unique, what made us do amazing things in the last century. And now we're sort of here at these new values. And for trainers, this is kind of helpful because it's a kind of boots on the ground way to get a grip on what's really happening right now. One of the things that makes Americans sort of, America sort of a unique culture is that there is a lot of forgiveness here. If you screw up, if you make a mistake, as in other cultures, honor is at stake. Here, being the guilt-based culture, not the shame-based culture that we are, it's okay to make a mistake, and we really love this concept of the comeback kid. So my hope is, all kidding aside, all the reverence aside, all poking fun at my own culture aside, I'm really hopeful, and that's part of me being an American as an optimist, that, we sort of turn the ship around and see that we got a little lazy and we took our eye off the ball, but that we have a comeback. Because I think we did a lot of wonderful things, just like many other cultures done. I think we've contributed an awful lot, and I hope that we sort of get back to that place and really don't discuss politics and religion and so forth. But we found a way to do that, and that's through our comedians. And so anyhow, at one point he said, in new rules, Americans must stop bragging it's the greatest country on earth. And start acting like it. And he says, I know this is uncomfortable for the faiths over facts crowd, but the greatness of a country can be measured. And so he said, here are some numbers. Infant mortality rate, America ranks 48th in the world. And overall health, 72nd. Freedom of the press, 44th, and literacy, 55th. So, there really is room for a discussion and a dialogue about what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. This Thomas Friedman, who wrote The World is Flat, that, we've got to save more, consume less, study longer, and work harder than we ever have, than we've ever been accustomed to in the last recent decades. So this is directly related to the idea that I mentioned earlier about American exceptionalism. If you're going to be exceptional, if Americans are going to be exceptional, then they really have to sort of earn that. And we did. We earned it quite well, I think, in the last mid-century. We've sort of done the right thing. In many ways, it's science, and politics, and economics, and socially, and so forth. But I think that we need to do some homework now. It's a different world. There's been a definite global shift. It's sort of like, we're stereotyped. There's a bunch of warmongers, and so it's a little frustrating. And I remember one of the things that I really liked about President Obama's bid for becoming president years ago was he said, if we're talking, we're not shooting. And that made a lot of sense to me. I thought, ultimately lives are at stake in whatever you're talking about, war, even crime, when it comes to guns. So I'm not real thrilled with this first new American value that we are just embracing crazy. We are weirdly amosexual. The idea is that, to me, it kind of goes against our values of living a life of liberty and the pursuit of happiness as a peace-loving nation. So that's what this webinar is all about. It's about how these new values sort of don't really jive not only with the traditional standard recognized values, but they kind of go against what I felt was, let's say, in quotes, the American way. So, you know, yeah, I'm anti-guns, that's just me personally, but I'm really anti-guns in the way that they're understood today. Um, my dad was a hunter, and I, would go hunting with him when I was a kid, and so it's not like I don't get guns. Um, but I just think that on the one hand, it's important to recall that our independence was fought and won by ordinary citizens who were armed historically to fight for their freedom, which was then codified in the Constitution. So therefore, the Second Amendment is, the right to bear arms. Now, the reason why the gun nuts kind of go crazy is because no law can go against the Constitution. So that's their argument. That's why they dig their heels in. So knowing why they do this helps a little, I think. I still disagree with it, but I think the problem has become that they have taken it to the extremes. And it also sort of related and connected to that is it seems that, the more we sort of have this notion of like protecting ourselves and, don't tread on me, we've carried it over into these gated communities, schools have lockdown, and ironically, the more guns that we've been permitted to carry, we, the more afraid we've become, and actually crime has gone down. So it doesn't really make sense. In other words, the imminent threat may be more perceived than actual.
Here, we've got an interesting question come in, which I had heard. So the Peter talks about there's the right to bear arms, which is interpreted by individuals as the right to play with guns, where really it's more about bearing arms, which is to serve in the militia. So when there is a need to form a posse for some constructive and fairly civilized defense or something. So there's really a misinterpretation of what the amendment, the Second Amendment, is talking about.
Yes, I mean, there are two pieces to it. You're absolutely right. The first piece, I think, you could sort of validate in some way, which is it's part of the Constitution, and you cannot tamper with the Constitution. No law can go against the Constitution is written in the Constitution, right? So that's one piece. Okay. However, the document should be a living, breathing document that should adapt to the times. But this is not something that's possible in the foreseeable future because of what I just said. The second piece, you're absolutely right, which is we had a well-ordered, a well-regulated militia because at the time we didn't have a constitution.
Yeah.
So that's just it. Now we have police headquarters, we have laws, we have rules that govern our country that we fought for. But so this is kind of, putting the cart after the horse.